Grace, peace, and welcome to the gospel, raw, uncut, and unheard. My name is Josiah Israel.
And I'm Brother Antonio.
Today we're going to be dealing with yet another provocative topic according to the scripture. We're going to be dealing with Israel, a black nation. I know that topic sounds very controversial. If you've never seen us before, if you've never seen a show before, you might think, wow, there goes a racist group right there that try to use the Bible, all this. No, it's nothing like that. All we're going to do today is, according to the scripture, we're going to show you is the correct appearance of what the ancient Israelites, the true people of Israel, look like, as opposed to how we have been led to believe how they are today. Because many of us have been led to believe that what we call the Jewish people are the direct descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But we're going to find out, according to Scripture, that is impossible. So open up your Bibles, and we're going to start this out at Genesis, the 10th chapter. Genesis, the 10th chapter. Genesis 10th chapter is talking about the descendants of Noah. Everyone on this earth, according to these scriptures, descended out of Noah. Because Noah and his 3 sons and their wives were delivered from the flood that destroyed all the inhabitants of the earth up until that time. Okay, so let's start this off at Genesis the 10th chapter and verse 1.
Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyrus.
So of the 3 sons of Noah, the first son he starts breaking down is the sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus. Now, you go into Bible atlases or encyclopedias and they break down who these sons of Japheth are. I'm going to just pinpoint a couple of them that I just happen to know. Magog is Russia today. Javan, he is the father of the Greek people, of the Greek nation. Okay. Verse 3.
The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah.
Okay, one of these sons specifically, Ashkenaz, he is the father of the German people. Ashkenaz. A large segment of Jewish people today are called Ashkenazim. Or even if you look at the last part of that Ashkenaz, that's where the term Nazi come from. Ashkenaz. They are Germanic people, okay? Verse 4.
And the sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, Dodanim.
Okay, so if you do your research and look at all of these nations that we're reading about that came out of the sons of Japheth, you will find that Japheth is the progenitor of the European people. This is where all the European people come from the sons of Japheth. Now let's see what another name for these sons of Japheth are called. Verse 5.
By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families and their nations.
Verse 5, and we're reading out of the King James Version. It says, by these were the isles of the Gentiles. In scriptures, the term Gentile originates right here in Genesis the 10th chapter, verse 5. Other translations of the Bible, they're not going to say Gentiles there. They're going to say, like in the New World Translation, which is a Jehovah's Witness book, it's going to say, by these were the isles of the nations. Or another translation going to say, by these were the isles of the maritime people, or by these were the isles of the coastland peoples, or something like that. None of those designations or classifications don't even make sense, to be honest with you. Okay. The only designation that really makes sense is the way it's brought here in the King James Version by saying, by these were the isles of the Gentiles. The reason why I say that, because if I read, by these were the isles of the nations dividing their lands, what does that mean? Isles of the nations. What does that mean? We only read about one son of Noah, which is Japheth. There were isles of nations in Shem, and there were isles of nations in Ham.
So how does that make sense? But by these were the isles of the nations. Then it said by these were the isles of the maritime people, by these were the isles of the coastland people, but there was water, which is what maritime means, water. There was water in the other two sons. There were coasts in the other two sons. See, so those designations are designations that are used to deceive people into not knowing exactly what a Gentile is. Because we have been led to believe that if you're not a Jew, you are a Gentile, based on particular verses that you read in the New Testament, which don't really say that. It only says it like that because in those letters of Paul, Paul was speaking specifically to Gentiles. So that's the only reason why he make that terminology like that. If he was speaking to African people, he would have said there's no Jew or African. But he wasn't speaking to African people. He was speaking to the Gentile people. That's why he said, because he was a Jew. Or he was called a Jew. Specifically, he was out of the tribe of Benjamin or Benjamin. Okay? But all that is another lesson. Back to this, though. Verse 5 said, by these sons of Japhet were the isles of the Gentiles, divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue. Tongue is a very important point here, because we're going to read, well, we're not going to read that today, but if you go into the very next chapter, 11th chapter of Genesis, you read about how the Father put the different languages on this earth wherewith the whole earth was scattered. Because at one point, we were all of one tongue. But when they went and built under Nimrod the Tower of Babel, the Father confounded them by giving them all different tongues. And through the speaking of those tongues, they began to be gathered into their lands, into their nations. Okay, let's go on to verse 6.
And the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, and Phut, and Canaan.
Okay, so Ham had 4 sons here. The 4 sons are Cush. Cush today is known as the who?
Ethiopians.
Ethiopians. Cush is known as the Ethiopians, okay? And Mizraim. Who is Mizraim known as?
Egyptians.
Mizraim is known, are the Egyptians, okay? And then we got Phut here. It says Phut here. Phut is the Libyans. Okay, Libyans is on the top, on the north part of Africa. That's who Libya is. And then we got Canaan. Canaan was an African people that dwelled in the northeastern part of Africa. Their land is the promised land that was promised to the nation of Israel. That's the land that we inhabited. That was our land, the nation of Israel, because the Father spewed the Canaanites out of their land, okay? But all 4 of these lands, or these people, are what we come to know as African people. They were a darker hued people. They went from the light brown hue, physically speaking, to black, or as they call in the hood, blue-black. Dark, okay? But that's who the Hamites were. Now, here's the thing. The so-called African American that we are called here in this land, we are not out of Ham. We don't come out of Ham, and we're going to be showing you this out of subsequent lessons, because we were led to believe that we are Hamites, but we are not Hamites, and we're going to show exactly who we are. But anyway, I want you to skip down, because we're not going to break down the whole descendants of Ham. Skip down to Genesis the 10th chapter and verse 21. Genesis the 10th chapter and verse 21.
Unto Shem also the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder, even to him were children born.
So now we're breaking down the children of Shem, and look how he's introduced it. It says that also unto Shem, also the father of all the children of Eber.
So right there, we got to figure out now who's this Eber, because we up to this point throughout the scriptures we haven't even read nothing about a Eber, but it breaks down. It just brings out Eber here as being the father, as Shem as being the father of all the children of Eber. Eber here, brothers and sisters, is where Hebrew come from. This is all the father of all the children of the Hebrews. Because remember, we all were divided according to our tongue. The tongue is what identified us, because the Father took those tongues and scattered us throughout the world. Hebrew is a language. Because what happened is that people go into, later on in the Genesis, when it introduces Abraham, and he says Abraham the Hebrew, and they say, well, that's the first Hebrew there. Now, you got to understand, first and foremost, that Hebrew, again, is a tongue. Abraham did not speak a tongue different from the tongue that his father spoke. So, because he didn't speak a different tongue, how could he have been the first Hebrew? The first Hebrew, brothers and sisters, is this Eber right here. Eber was given the tongue of Hebrew. And we're going to read about another Shemitic language that comes out of Shem. Not only Hebrew, go on to verse 22.
The children of Shem, Elam, Ashur, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram.
Right. Okay, so out of these children of Shem, I know one of them, Asher, is who the Assyrians are. Asher is the father of the Assyrians. And then I see another one here, which is Aram. Aram, the descendants of Aram, speak the language of Aramaic. That is where Aramaic come from, okay? Verse 23.
And the children of Aram, Uz, and Hul, and Gether, and Mash. And Arphaxad begat Salah, and Salah begat Eber.
Wow, Eber is mentioned way down here, but he was already mentioned when the children of Shem was first introduced. Okay, but then he says, so Eber is the great grandson of Shem. So what was the distinction about Eber that he had to be introduced? Again, he is the father of the Hebrews. Okay, verse 25.
And unto Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan.
Right. So Eber was around during the time when the earth was divided, and it breaks down two of his sons. One name was Peleg, and the other name was Joktan. Okay, so now let's go into so I just wanted to do a real quick breakdown of Genesis, the 10th chapter, just to show you how the inhabitants of the earth got broken down in these three sons, beginning with Japheth, the father of the Europeans, and then going down to Ham, who's the father of the African people, the African nations, and then you have Shem, who is the father of the inhabitants that dwell in what we now call the Middle East or Northern Africa. From these three sons, again, was the whole earth populated, okay? Let's go into Genesis, the 25th chapter, because we want to focus on what we're dealing with here as Israel, a black nation, okay? Genesis, the 25th chapter. Why did I have this on? Hold on 1 second. I don't know. About Jacob and Esau. I was going to deal with that. You know what? I'm not even going to touch that. I hope I don't regret it. We know why I'm going to deal with that. Genesis 25th chapter. Genesis 25th chapter, and let's start this off at the 19th verse.
And these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begot Isaac. And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel, the Syrian of Padan Aram, the sister to Laban the Syrian. And Isaac entreated Yah for his wife, because she was barren, and Yah was entreated to him. And Rebekah, his wife, conceived.
Okay, so now we're talking about the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Okay, Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife. Okay, so he takes a wife, Rebekah, and Rebekah was barren. Okay, and Isaac prayed to the father in regard to Rebekah. Read that 21 again.
And Isaac entreated Yah for his wife, because she was barren, and Yah was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived.
Go ahead.
And the children struggled together within her, and she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of YAH.
Right.
And YAH said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger.
Okay, so I want you all to understand that she had twins in her womb, Rebecca. Okay, and it said that the children struggled within her, and she wanted to know what was going on. The father told her that 2 nations were in her womb. Okay, 2 nations and 2 manner of people. And one people shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. Now, I want you all to remember that these are 2 totally different people that's going to be in her womb, okay? Verse 24.
And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red, all over like an hairy garment, and they called his name Esau.
Now notice the elder, which is Esau, came out first. And he's given a physical description of what he looked like when he came out. It says that he came out red and hairy. Red, and he came out red all over like a hairy garment, and his name was Esau. So the first thing that was describing Esau was how he looked, which he was given the color red. Okay, in verse 26.
And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them.
Now notice that Jacob was not given a physical description. Esau was given a physical description. So the very first difference between these 2 individuals that would be 2 totally different people that come totally 2 different nations was a physical description. Before you can get into any other difference, you got to understand that the first difference is a physical description of physical distinction of how one looked totally different from the other.
That's right.
Totally contrary to the other, because they was from one side to the other. That would make them different. They could not have been alike in no way, form whatsoever. So Esau was described as being red and hairy all over, okay? However the way that you could formulate that image of your mind, just formulate it however you can, but the image of Esau was that he was red and hairy all over. And the reason why I'm saying it like that, because in a European context, there's what they consider a red people. But then in the African context, you got another type of red that could be considered red. Or even in the Middle Eastern, European, or maybe even an Asian concept, you got what would be considered a red. To these people, that's considered red in their form of mind. And in the European, that might be considered red in that form of mind. So red is relative to whatever nation you come, or region that you're in. You understand what I'm saying? So you can pretty much assume that because they were in a hot climate region of northeast Africa, that red had to be a red based off of that red, okay? You can kind of assume that, but we're not going to do any assumptions. The only thing that I want you to come away with this understanding is that Jacob did not look anything like his brother.
That's right.
Okay, that's the thing that we're just going to get across. But the scripture is going to let us know that the nation of Israel was physically likened to one other nation throughout the entire scriptures. So when you can see what that nation looked like historically, then you could pinpoint on what the nation of Israel looked like.
When we look at Israel and how they appeared into the Bible, there is only one nation in the Old and New Testament that the Israelites were physically likened to, and this was the nation of Egypt. So when we can pinpoint what the ancient Egyptians looked like, then you could put your hands on what the true children of Israel looked like. Let's go into Genesis, the 42nd chapter, and we're going to read here in regarding this comparison here. Genesis 42nd chapter picks up where Joseph, who is one of the sons of Israel, or one of the sons of Jacob, Jacob's name was changed to Israel, he was Israel's favorite son. And throughout the process of time, he ended up being a ruler, the ruler, as a matter of fact, in Egypt. Only one person was over him, and that was the Pharaoh of Egypt. But because of the events that you can read about previous to this, he ended up being the ruler in Egypt, okay? Genesis, the 42nd chapter, and let's start this off at verse 1.
Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, Why do ye look one upon another? And he said, Behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get ye down thither, and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die.
So what happened was that Joseph, because through the power of the Most High, he caused Egypt to be delivered from the famine that had affected that entire region of the world. And all the other nations that ended up starving, they had to go to Egypt to buy corn. So when they went to Egypt to buy corn, because of the wisdom that the Father given Joseph, he was the one that ruled over this whole process of all the people coming to Egypt to buy corn. So now Israel, or Jacob, he's in the land of Canaan with his other sons, and they there ended up starving right there. And they say, look, we heard that there's corn in Egypt. Why y'all looking, staring at one another? Go down in Egypt and go get some corn. Okay, and so verse 3.
And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob sent not with his brethren, for he said, lest peradventure mischief befall him.
Right.
And the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came. Famine was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was the governor over the land. And he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth.
Now, what happened was that when Joseph was younger, living among his brother, he had a dream. And in his dream, he dreamed that, in essence, that his mother, his father, and his 10 brothers bowed, 11 brothers, bowed down themselves to him. And that dream was serious to him, but when he told his dream, that only made his brothers jealous. But he knew that there was something about this dream that was true. And because of their jealousy, that's how he ended up here. Okay? And so it says, now, verse 6, now Joseph was a governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. So this was the fulfillment of the dream that he had years before when he was younger, that his brother was going to bow down before him. Okay, verse 7.
And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him.
Now, he knew that those were his brethren that came to him. But when they saw him, he looked like an Egyptian to them. He was standing before them, and with his Egyptian garb on. And when you look up, because I'm going to show you all in a minute, I'm going to show you guys what the ancient Egyptians look like. I'm going to show you what the ancient Egyptians look like. So when you see these pictures of what the ancient Egyptians look like, then you can put in your mind exactly what was going on here. Okay? Along with these pictures, I want some of you all to consider the video that Michael Jackson did some years ago.
Remember the time.
Remember the time.
Oh, yeah.
That was an amazing video. Because in that video, there was nobody else in that video but Egyptian-looking people that looked just like me and you in that video.
Yes, sir.
He went out and just, and honestly, when you think about it, that is the only video that I can even think of in my mind that he did not have entirely black people in the video. You look at Beat It, you look at Rock With You, well, he was only one of them Rock With You, but you look at just about any of these other videos that he did that had more than 3 or 4 people in it, and you're going to find white people in there, you're going to find Asian people in it, but this particular video he did, starring Eddie Murphy, starring Imam, starring Magic Johnson, and some of the most beautiful black people you could ever, I mean, this video was, and he was depicting what the true ancient Egyptians looked like. And when you see the video when it comes on, the first thing he showed is one of the hieroglyphics of the Egyptians, because he showed it to you. So when you see Iman and Eddie Murphy look like, you say that this is just what they look like. That video was powerful, man.
Another thing, brother, I mean, what made it deep is the name of the song alone speaks for itself.
Oh, man, come on.
Remember the time.
Come on. Come on. Come on. That was crazy. And that's what we are here for you all to do right now, to remember the time, because this book is a historical book. Excellent point. Michael was on some stuff then, y'all, but that was something. That wasn't just something to dance to. That was something to do just what he said, to remember the time. So anyway, you get that picture in your mind, and this is the picture that you see right here. You see Joseph standing there, ruling, governing over, and his brothers come before him. If the Egyptians were white or looking like the way that the inhabitants of Egypt look today, because what happens is that if you look at Egypt today, it has been populated by Muslim, I should say Muslim, by Arab people, or even Turkish Arab people, a lighter hue skin of people, like in the movie Malcolm X, when he did his pilgrimage to there, and he was talking to the people were not ancient Egyptians that he was talking to. He was talking to, because what happened was, after the so-called false prophet Muhammad did his thing in creating the religion Islam, they went and populated the whole, converted many people in Africa, which is the reason why our people, when we came to the shores of America, we were practicing Islam, which you can see depicted in the movie Roots. Because we were forced into that religion, okay? That is not the black man's religion as we were told through Nation of Islam or whatever. We were forced into that, okay? But those people that forced us into that are the ones who took control of Egypt. They took control of Libya, who is Phut, that we read about earlier in Genesis, the 10th chapter. Remember, all that whole northern part of Africa, they took control. Because Libya, who was Muammar Gaddafi and all them, they're Arab people, okay? So here, historically, the ancient Egyptians look like, if you all remember the President Anwar Sadat, which when they did a movie of Anwar Sadat, he was portrayed by Louis Gossett. Incidentally, I just mentioned Roots, and he just happened to portray Anwar Sadat, the president of Egypt. That's what the ancient Egyptians look like, okay? All right, but here it was. So the point again is that if Joseph looked at like an Arab type of person, the way you see these quote-unquote Egyptian people look today, then when his brothers came before him, they would have been like, wait a minute now, that ain't an Egyptian standing up there ruling among all those other black Egyptians.
Yeah.
Not only that, but if he was white the way the people perceive the so-called being the Jewish people, then that definitely would have been out of pocket, because you would have had a white Joseph standing there with his white brothers bowing down to him, but then they should have been scratching their head like, man, how you get to be the governor of Egypt with all those Egyptians around him? How you get to do that? You see, they should have been able to look at him and say, okay, I know he's going to give us a break because we look like we come from around the same place. And he probably, man, you know, he kind of favored Benjamin, our little brother back home. Man, matter of fact, he look a little bit like you a little bit. Man, you know, we got the, man, I want the shoes. Let's see. They should have been thinking of some stuff like, okay, now I know we done, you know, something should have been going on, but they did not have, they thought they were looking at it in the ancient Egyptian when they saw Joseph. Okay? That was their own brother. But they Hebrews. Okay? The point is that when they saw him, they thought they saw an Egyptian. And this is one of the ways he disguised himself. He didn't put on black face to look like the other Egyptians, because he already looked like the other Egyptians. Skip down to verse 23. Oh, no, as a matter of fact, skip down to verse 21.
And they said one to another, we are verily guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is the distress come upon us. And Reuben answered them, saying, spake I not unto you, saying, do not sin against the child, and ye would not hear? Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. And they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by an interpreter.
Now, Joseph still, he looked it like his brothers. It was 10 of them there, 11 of them counting Joseph. And they stood there because they thinking he's an Egyptian. They speaking in among themselves. He's Egyptian. He don't understand what we're saying. They're like, man, look, man, all this evil is happening to us here in Egypt because of what we did to our brother. And Reuben, the oldest brother, say, didn't I tell y'all that we shouldn't have done that? And Joseph standing right there listening to them. They think he ain't understand what it's saying. It says, and they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spoken to them by an interpreter. So you got two brothers standing before you on your TV screen right now. If you had turned on a TV and he starts speaking of an Ethiopian dialect, and I start speaking an Ethiopian dialect, the first y'all say, wow, those two Ethiopian cats that's on screen talking. Okay? We may look like what you think is African American, but once we open up our mouths, you'll say, well, no, they ain't from America. They from Africa over there. Why? Because we look like that. So when they saw Joseph, and then he's like, Joseph is sitting there like speaking to them through an interpreter, he know Hebrew very well. But to disguise who he was, he had an interpreter that spoke both language, and they over there speaking Hebrew, but when he spoke to them, he's talking to the one that can speak both languages and say, look, tell them this, that, and the other. And he's speaking Hebrew to them, and they like, so they know for a fact, Joseph can't understand what we're saying, so we speak wide open. It's just like how we are, you know, here when you be out in the street and people of another nationality, I don't care what they are, whether they be Hispanic or whatever, they perceive that you ain't understand what they're saying. They be speaking loud, man. They be speaking loud. They don't understand. He don't know my language, so I ain't got to be whispering. I can say whatever I want to say. Yeah, he spoke to them by an interpreter, which what it was the charade for him to show them that, hey, I'm not, even if you even think that I'm a Hebrew, I'm an Egyptian. I look like an Egyptian, I'm speaking like an Egyptian, and that's how they, so this is one example of how an Israelite looked just like an Egyptian, that even his own brothers didn't even notice that was their own brother up there thinking he was an Egyptian. Let's look at some other examples. Exodus, the 2nd chapter, Exodus 2. In this example, we're going to look in regard to Moses. Moses was raised up as an Egyptian in the household of Pharaoh. Okay? And when he raised up in the household of Pharaoh, events happened that caused him to flee out of the land of Egypt, and he ended up in Midian. Midian, incidentally, is one of the children of Abraham. You can read about Midian in Genesis, the 25th chapter. His mother was Keturah. That was a wife that Abraham took when after Sarah died. Okay, but anyway, Genesis the 2nd chapter, and let's start this off at Genesis the 2nd chapter, and let's pick this up at verse 15, when Moses ran out of Egypt.
Now, when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh, and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now the priests of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away. But Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to Reuel, their father, he said, How is it that ye are come so soon today? And they said, An Egyptian delivered us out of the hands of the shepherd, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock.
So when the daughters of Reuel, these were Midianite women, when they described Moses to their father, they described them as being an Egyptian. They didn't describe him as being a Hebrew. And I want you all to understand what we started off with in Genesis the 10th chapter. We started off letting you know that Hebrew began with Eber, and from Eber there were a whole bunch of nations that came out of Hebrew. Abraham himself being the father of many nations. So out of all the Hebrew nations that exist, and it's quite funny, when they saw Moses, they didn't even call him out of one of the Hebrew nations.
Yeah.
They call him an Egyptian,
Man.
which is out of the sons of Ham, an African people.
There we go.
That's kind of deep, ain't it? They didn't say, oh, an Ammonite, a Moabite, an Ishmaelite, a Edomite. And he was, understand, he was an Israelite. But when they described him as a Egyptian. Okay? Very deep. Okay? So he had to look just like an ancient Egyptian. That is what the Israelites look like. They look like African people.
That's right.
Okay? Let's see if we can see other examples. Let's go on. Let's read something else about Moses. Exodus, the 4th chapter. Because here the Father is speaking to Moses, giving Moses signs whereby he may show himself to his people and to Pharaoh, and bringing deliverance out of the land of Egypt. Exodus, the 4th chapter, and verse 1.
And Moses answered and said, But behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, but they will say, YAH hath not appeared unto thee. And YAH said unto him, What is that in thine hand? And he said, A rod. And he said, Cast it on the ground. And he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moses fled from before it.
Now, this is familiar. Why I say this familiar? Because in every movie we've seen, the 10 Commandments, Prince of Egypt, they show this sign here of a rod in Moses' hand. He throw it on the ground, and it becomes a serpent. Okay? And this is what it's talking about here. Verse 4.
And YAH said unto Moses, Put forth thine hand, and take it by the tail. And he put forth his hand and caught it, and it became a rod in his hand. That they may believe that YAH, Elohim of their fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Jacob, hath appeared unto thee. And YAH said furthermore unto him, Put now thine hand into thy bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow.
Oh, now you know what? This is very interesting here. This is very interesting here. And why I'm saying this interesting is it's kind of deep. Because the thing is that Father told him to put his hand in his bosom. When he put his hand in his bosom and he took it out, his hand became leprous as snow. His hand was white. And you know what's interesting about this is that when we read about the birth of Esau was described as being colored red. So we know by process of elimination that Israel wasn't red. And then we find Moses hand coming out of his bosom being white. Now that's deep, because so by process of elimination, Moses or any other Israelites could not have been red overall as a people, and they definitely couldn't have been white. Okay, because when he put his hand out of his bosom and it became white, that was a sign. Okay, and that sign was so deep. First of all, I know of 2 movies that accounts of this event. The Ten Commandments and the Prince of Egypt, probably 2 of the most popular movies. Neither of those movies show this sign. They show the snake, rod turn into a snake, but they don't show this sign. Why don't those, especially the Charlton Heston Ten Commandments, why don't that movie show him putting his hand in his bosom and it comes out white? That wouldn't have been too much of a sign for Charlton Heston to do. That wouldn't have been too much of a stretch.
Yeah.
It'd have been like, man, you might have just had your hand in your bosom a little bit too long, okay? That's why it's white, maybe, whatever. What kind of sign is that? You know, you wasn't out in the sun long enough, okay? But the Jewish people that we see that's so-called Jews, they, for the most part, we see them, they're white people. You know, honestly. They're definitely not looking like the ancient Egyptian people, okay? Now again, some of you may be offended by this, but we're going according to what the scripture said, that the true children of Israel looked like the Egyptians. Moses put his hand in his bosom, and he put it out, it became leprous as snow. Verse 7.
And he said, put thine hand into thy bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again, and he plucked it out of his bosom, and behold, it was turned again as other flesh.
So his other flesh was the exact opposite of the leprous as snow. Okay? And let's see how deep this sign was, though. Verse 8.
And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe thee, neither hearken to the voice of the first sign, that they will believe the voice of the latter sign. Okay, he says, and this shall come to pass that they would not believe you, because you're going to go and tell them that Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel, have appeared unto me. He said, it shall come to pass that they would not believe you, neither hearken to the voice of the first sign. What's the first sign? The snake and the rod.
If they don't believe that first sign, he said that they will believe the voice of the latter sign, because the whole process was that Moses speaking. They don't believe. Now he's going to take a rod and it's going to turn into a snake. Oh, man. Wait a minute. Some of them still ain't believing. He going to put his Egyptian dark hand and put it into his flesh, and it come out, it's going to be leprous and snow. He said they will believe that. See, because in our understanding or lack thereof, we thought that was a deep thing for that rod to turn into a snake. Compared to the second sign, that first sign ain't nothing according to what he's saying here in the scripture. So I asked again, why don't they show that in these movies that depict the Ten Commandments?
Brother, my guess is good as yours.
But again, they don't show it because they don't want to show the truth. But the truth is in the word of the Most High, brothers and sisters. Moses was a dark, Egyptian-looking character, as all of the Israelites were.
Yes.
They were all dark people that we call in this day and age black. But when he put his hand out his bosom and it was white as snow, boy, they was like, oh man, what's going on here? That was a deep thing for them. He said if they don't believe the voice of the first sign, they will hearken to the voice of that second sign. You know. But anyway, let's look at this furthermore down. Let's go on to Numbers, the 12th chapter. Numbers, the 12th chapter. Numbers 12. We're gonna read against one myth that they say in return, because I'm gonna tell you this. You got Mormons, a very, very racist and in essence Christian organization. And I'm just going to be honest with you. And the reason why I'm saying that because I've read the Book of Mormon. And in the Book of Mormon, tried to depict Miriam as being white. you know, whatever. It talks about this tribe of Israelites that came over here, particularly this one called the Lamanites, and they were cursed with dark skin. You know, that was a curse that they say. So, and then also you got even in certain Christian sects where they say that we were cursed with the curse of Cain or whatever, meaning in their interpretation cursed with dark skin. But you can't find that nowhere in the scriptures that dark skin was the curse. We're going to see, according to scripture, what is a skin color curse, okay? Numbers, the 12th chapter. Let's start this off at verse 1.
All right. And Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman he had married. For he had married an Ethiopian woman.
Okay. Moses married an Ethiopian woman. What color was that woman that Moses married?
Black.
Okay, she was black. Reason why we know she was black because the word Ethiopia comes from the word Ethiop, which means burnt face. Okay, so she was black. That's what color she was. This is going to be very important. And the concept isn't that he married a black woman. Oh, and you know, a white man, he was white, so he married. No, he was the same color or a close pigmentation to that Ethiopian black. Okay, but it was the fact that he married a woman outside of Israel, which was an Ethiopian woman that caused a stir with his own family. But keep in mind that he married an Ethiopian woman. Okay, verse 2.
And they said, Have YAH indeed spoken only by Moses? Hath he not spoken also by us? And YAH heard it.
Now, his big brother and his big sister speaking. Miriam is upset because he had married an Ethiopian woman. They like, wait a minute, hold up. He said, have YAH indeed spoken only by Moses? Ain't he spoken also by us? It says, and YAH heard it. Verse 3.
Now the man Moses was very meek above all the men which are upon the face of the earth.
Oh, and keep in mind that, you know, we attribute these 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, to being the books of Moses. But there's no way that Moses wrote this 3rd verse. This had to be probably more than likely written by Yeshua, the son of Nun, the one who came after Moses, because Moses wouldn't have wrote that he was meek above all men on the face of the earth. But verse 4.
And YAH spake suddenly unto Moses and unto Aaron and unto Miriam, Come out ye 3 into the tabernacle of the congregation. And the 3 came out. And YAH came down in the pillar of the cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forth. And he said, Hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, YAH, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and I will speak unto him in a dream. My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all mine house. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches, and in the similitude of YAH shall he be whole. Wherefore then were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?
So, and it's something that just occurred to me, that in another place, Miriam, she is actually called a prophetess in another place here in the scriptures. But, so I guess because of that title that she had, you know, or that gift that she had in being a prophetess, she like, man, you know, have he only spoken by Moses, didn't he speak to us again? The father had to come down and clarify something, specifically to Miriam, since she had this problem with her younger brother because he married an Ethiopian woman. He said, hear now my words. If there be a prophet or a prophetess among you, I, Yahweh, will make myself known unto him in a vision and will speak to him in a dream. But Moses, my servant Moses, it ain't so. Who is faithful in all my house. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches. And also the similitude or the image of me shall he behold, which he did. He didn't see his face, but he saw his backside. He saw him, and wasn't nobody else given that opportunity to behold the Father like that. Except for the one who was sent like unto Moses, but that's a whole nother lesson. he says, with him when I speak mouth to mouth, and not in dark speeches, and a similitude of YAH shall he behold. Wherefore then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? In other words, you should have been very careful before you open your mouth against your younger brother who I had sanctified. Okay? He said, and in verse 9.
And the anger of YAH was kindled against them, and he departed.
I love just how that's phrased. And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against them, and he departed. You know, when I read this, it just reminds me, it's kind of, you know, because I can get like this. In other words, it's like when you, somebody did something crazy, and then you have to actually, it could be maybe your children or whatever, then you have to actually verbalize something that you feel you shouldn't even have to even waste your time dealing with. And the very fact that you even have to verbalize it makes you more upset than it was when you first started dealing with the situation. And that's how the Father, because Father didn't, he says he came down from the cloud, you know, and Miriam and Aaron, they looking like, okay, they probably clapped their hands like, oh yeah, he's finna settle this right now, okay? Because you over there walking around with that Ethiopian woman. No, the Father ain't with that stuff. He about to come down and deal with this right now. You see what I'm saying? And he said, you two come out. That's right. We about to go get our reward now, boy. Moses, you about to be put into your place right now. You know, if that be a prophet among you, I'm going to speak to him in a vision or in a dream. But that right there that y'all spoke against, see, they got put into their place. You see what I'm saying? And the fact that, again, that he had to say that, it says, and the anger of Yah was kindled against them, and he departed. Like, man, I had to waste my precious time to come down here and deal with
them know this.
Right. When y'all should have even known better than this. But I'm upset because, you know, because y'all picking on him because he's a meek cat. But if he wasn't meek, if he didn't have the spirit of the Most High in him, I wouldn't have had to come down because he would have put y'all in y'all place anyway. You know, I'm just kind of going into my mind about maybe what's the Father dealing with that really caused him to be upset, because he had to come down and deal with this because, you know, he had to defend the meek, which is something that we read in the scriptures that that's what he do anyway. He defend the meek. He's angered against those who come up against the meek. And his own people came down against him just simply because they thought that they could. Let's see, if Moses would have been drawing that sword, you know what I'm saying, but that wasn't what was given to him to do. He had wisdom enough to understand that, okay? But he said, hey, and the anger of Yahweh was kindled against them, okay? And verse 10.
And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous.
Wow. Now, I want you all to understand this. First of all, this is the only skin color curse throughout the scriptures. Leprosy, which is in here described as white as snow. Okay? So, we might, as a people, might be cursed with a few other things, but skin color is definitely not the curse. It's not one of them. Not one of them. You ain't going to find that nowhere in the scriptures. But white skin is a curse mentioned right here in the scriptures, okay? In the scriptures. And because you all are kind enough to have your Bibles open as we're reading, you ain't got to wonder what translation of the Bible are they reading. Because it's the same translation they reading out of, okay? But again, we're not on here, you know, for any racist intent. We just trying to put these facts in order according to the word. And also, I just want to address this too. The subject that we dealing with, you know, we might be talking to other people about it. They be like, you know, it don't make no difference what color it was. Well, you know, when you say that, brothers and sisters, that's an opinion. Because everything in the word makes a difference. If the Father put it in His word, there's something to it.
Yes, sir.
Don't try to speak for the Father to say what's important and what ain't important, because this is as important as anything else that's written in the Word. You being very presumptuous if you can say, well, it don't make no difference this and it's not. Yes, it is important, because we're reading it right here out of the scriptures, okay? So I just wanted to clarify that, okay? But it says, and so her skin, and I want you all to really understand how deep this is too, because if you keep in mind that this happened to Miriam because she spoke out because Moses married an Ethiopian woman, that is the same to say that she thought herself as an Israelite to be better than an Ethiopian woman. Now, with that understanding, to me, seemed like a better curse would have been for Miriam to be turned black, like the Ethiopian woman. But there's only one problem with that. She was already black like the Ethiopian woman. That could not have been a curse. He turned her into a color that when the Ethiopian woman looked at her, she's like, that's what you get.
Who better than who now?
That's what you get. Come on now.
Yeah.
Because we know that the Ethiopian woman was black. So if Miriam was white, she could have, that wouldn't have been no worse curse than for her to be turned the same color as the Ethiopian woman.
Oh, yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
All day.
But she could not have been turned the same color as the Ethiopian woman. Just like Moses' hand coming out of his bosom being turned black. Huh? Wait a minute. Something must be broken. Let me try it again. Let me try it again. It came out white as snow. Okay, wow. Now this is the sign. His hand turning black couldn't have possibly been the sign. Miriam turning black could not have possibly been the curse. Come on now, we reading this thing line upon line, precept upon precept. This ain't opinion that you get. You getting the raw, uncut word here. She was turned leprous, white as snow. That was a curse. Let's see, what did Aaron say when he saw her reading verse 11?
And Aaron said unto Moses, At last, my Lord, I beseech thee, lay not the sin upon us wherein we have done foolishly, and wherein we have sinned. Let her not be as one of the dead, of whom the flesh is half consumed when he cometh out of his mother's womb.
He described a child that she looked like a child whose flesh is half consumed. Consumed means stricken with leprosy or whatever kind of ailment that would make a child look like that when he look like he's half dead when he come out the womb. That's heavy right there. Aaron spoke quickly unto Moses because he knew that he probably wasn't too far behind and looking like Miriam. He like, whoa, let me speak out. I'm sorry. I am sorry. Please, no, help my sister. Okay.
Let her not be as one of the dead, of whom the flesh is half consumed when he cometh out of his mother's womb. And Moses cried unto YAH, saying, Heal her now, O Elohim, I beseech thee.
Right.
And YAH said unto Moses, If her father had but spit in her face, should she not be ashamed 7 days? Let her be shut out from the camp 7 days, and after that, let her be received in again.
So the father was still mad. Aaron had asked Moses to pray to the father for her to be healed. The father said, let her be healed. And then when he spoke to the father still sitting up there stewing. He said, man, if her father had but spit in her face, shouldn't she be shut out that camp for 7 days? If her father had but spit in her face, should she not be ashamed 7 days? Let her be shut out from the camp 7 days, and after that, let her be received in again. Okay? So we went here just to show you that Israelites were not a white people, okay? They were an Ethiopian, an ancient Egyptian looking people, okay? Acts the 21st chapter, Acts 21, and let's go on to verse 37. Acts 21 and 37. Acts 21 and 37. This is talking about the Apostle Paul and what was happening here when all these Hebrews was chasing them there. Acts 21, and start this off at verse 36. I'm sorry, Acts 21 and 36.
For the multitude of the people followed after, crying, Away with him. And as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, May I speak unto thee? Who said, Canst thou speak Greek?
So Paul spoke to the chief captain, which was a Gentile, which was a Greek, or he might have been a Roman or a Greek. He said, May I speak unto you? He turned and looked at Paul and said, man, can you speak Greek? So Greek people, brothers and sisters, are European people, or as we call them, white people. When this European looked at Paul, when Paul looked at him and said, look, can I speak to you? And Paul said it in the Greek language. He like, man, can you speak Greek? In other words, he didn't look like he could speak Greek.
Yeah.
If he were looking like a Greek or looking like any European person, that wouldn't have been a shock that he could speak Greek. But he didn't look, he looked like, let's see what he looked like. Verse 38.
Art not thou the Egyptian, which before these days made us an uproar and led us out into the wilderness 4,000 men that were murderers?
When that Greek soldier saw Paul, he saw an Egyptian. But what was Paul? Verse 39.
But Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew of a Hebrew,
Right.
of Tarsus, a city in Cilicia.